Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
And welcome to this week's episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am so thrilled to have everyone here today. I am Maureen Scanlon, your hostess and life coach Maureen, as most of you know me. I'm so excited to have my beautiful guest today because, unlike most guests who I've never met before, I deeply connected with my next guest. She came to me for life coaching and we've just evolved into this friendship, and I just adore her and what she's doing. And the thing I love most about her is her vulnerability and her willingness to be transparent about her struggles. And that's what we love here on I Never Knew, is that to share those struggles with others takes bravery, but you're doing it because you want to help others. So my guest today, her name is Jaclyn Brown, and she's the owner of Stay Golden Coaching and Consulting. And Jaclyn has been very active in being a harm reduction advocate. And she also works with families who've lost loved ones to addiction and overdose. And we're going to get into her story. But first, we're going to say hello. Oh, and let me add that she's also the hostess of her podcast, Dark and Enlightened. So make sure you guys go over there and subscribe and listen. So hi, my girlfriend. She's very glowy today. If you guys are
hi, friend. How are you?
I'm well. What's really good is that the lawn guys said they'd be here at noon. It's now 1:00 and I have a sign on the door saying, don't ring the doorbell because we're recording and my dogs will lose their shit.
Yep.
And so, of course, they didn't show up between the noon and 12:30 window. And literally, as
you
I
just got a text.
And no, he actually showed up and I was like, oh God, we're going on in 5 minutes. As I pushed the record button, he drove off. So the yard gods are with us today. That's all.
I love when you start recording and all of a sudden a leaf blower comes on. I'm like, really? Of all the times.
I know. And I have one dog in one room and one dog in the room with me. And the one with me is usually the barker. And so the other one in the other room, little JD Chihuahua, heard him and started barking. And this one perks up and I looked at her and I was like, don't you dare. I gave her the mom look like, no.
It's because they're going to rile each other up. Like, I don't even know what I'm barking at, but I'm going to bark too.
That's exactly it. She's like, I can't see anything. I'm at your feet, Mom, but she's barking at something. So something's going on. Exactly. And Jaclyn has two precious little furry babies. And we're going to talk about loss in that area as well. So my beautiful friend, let's talk about what I call the knee story. And the knee story is that point in your life. And I know we have many, but the most impactful one that really brought you to your knees where you said, I don't know if I can go on like this anymore. Tell us about your knee story.
So, as Maureen alluded to, I've been doing work with families who have been affected by substance use. I lost my younger brother, Mark, to a heroin overdose. And his addiction began back in like 2010, and he passed away in 2018. And if you are someone who is a family member who's been affected by this, you kind of understand like the whole time that is going on, you're kind of on eggshells and you're almost waiting for that phone call, which we hope we never get. And as much as we can try to prepare ourselves for that phone call, you can never do enough. And so that moment that you're talking about is when I got that call from my mom, and I could just tell, like, you can just tell by the tone in someone's voice. I just knew what it was. And she had found him, unfortunately. And it's one of those things where it was very surreal for me. Like, my husband was trying to get me to, like, okay, well, we need a pack. What do we need to do? And I just froze. I had no idea what I should be doing. Like, nothing seemed important. Like, why do I need clothes? Why do I need to do anything? And it wasn't, and this sounds terrible, but I was also wanting to delay going down to my parents' house, because it's like, if I don't show up, maybe it's not real. And on that 3-hour drive down there, it was just like, I was just in pure disbelief. And losing a sibling, I think, is, let me preface, if you have a great relationship with your siblings, it's incredibly hard. And my brother and I were always very close, but obviously with like a lot of people that go through addiction, there are periods where you need to step back from it. And at that point, my brother and I had not spoken in a few months. And it wasn't necessarily because we had some issue with each other, but he also had mental health issues. I realize now that I had probably mental health issues that I was not diagnosed for. So I hadn't talked to him in months, and that was weighing on me so heavy. But then it got to this is going to sound really weird, but social media is what really set me off. And in this time, I think that's one thing people don't think about, is when your loved one dies. My brother and my family, they live in a very small town, and small towns love to talk. So it was already being posted onto his wall probably within an hour of him passing away. And mind you, I actually got a message from one of his friends who said, "Hey, how are you holding up?" It was probably about 30 minutes after I found out the news. So what if I had not, found out yet? What if I had been at a movie? What if I had done anything? So the fact that people automatically were posting online, and then it led to, wait, what happened? And you see this conversation going online, but it's like, this literally just happened. So none of us slept, but as one does, I'm scrolling through social media, because now I'm like, what are people saying? Like, now I'm like, I don't want anyone to say anything before we even have a chance. And it was a really difficult conversation to have with my parents. It was a very weird, surreal conversation to be like, people on the internet are talking about this, and we should really say something, or I should say something to acknowledge what happened. And they were just kind of like in a daze, like, whatever, like, do what you need to do. But what really upset me was when seeing people speculate as to why it happened, because we didn't reveal what happened. My parents did end up getting an autopsy just to like be super sure. I mean, we all knew in our gut, but the people were like, oh, what happened? Was it just another overdose? And the way that people were diminishing his value, diminishing who he was. And the thing that set me off was I'm doing air quotes, no one can see this, air quotes, friend of his, posted a senior picture of him and did a hashtag, and another one bites the dust. And when I saw that, I lost my shit. Can I cuss on here? Sorry.
Absolutely. We let it fly. Let it fly, baby. Let it fly. No filtering here.
Yeah. So I like, seeing my brother reduced to like a hashtag like really pissed me off. And it was like this rage. Like, I'm already the big sister. I already was very protective of him and protective of his situation. And it was not my story to tell. So I never went and told people, hey, this is what my brother's going through. That's for him to tell. But now for other people to take his story and put their spin on it, I was not about that. So for me, like my first form of advocacy was his eulogy, which sounds really weird, but it was a way for me to highlight his life, what he had gone through, and the way it had affected us as well. And one of the big things that I pointed out was letting people know that he was someone who had dreams and hopes too. He is someone, his addiction does not define who he was. And once I did that, it was almost like this very, some minimal load off my shoulders, because up until this point, we had not said anything like openly. Like if you were close with our family, yeah, you knew what was going on, or close friends, but the stigma that still exists, I mean, this was 2018, the stigma still exists that, oh, well, what did you guys do wrong? What did your parents do wrong? What happened? And it's like you look at someone who is dealing with a substance use issue as someone who has like a moral failing, when in actuality, it's a disease. And at that point, it's like, either I can just never have to talk about this again, because, you know, I can just kind of shut that part down, or I can talk more about this and be open about it, because I came to this point where it was like the literal true on my, like, literally brought me to my knees moment was when we went to the funeral home for his wake, and we told my parents to go ahead of us and get there like 15 minutes early so they could have their time. We show up about 15 minutes later and they're still sitting outside the room. And I'm like, did you guys go in? They're like, no, we can't go in. And so me being the oldest, I'm like, all right. And my sister Allison, I'm like, Al, we should go in. And walking in, it was like almost as if we were tiptoeing, like, you know, like this is some weird horror attraction. And as soon as we get closer to the casket and I see him, Jordan, my husband, still tells me that he can hear like the wailing and the crying from my sister. And I literally dropped to my knees. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. And like just the fact that this didn't have to happen in this way, like there, you know, now in retrospect, there are so many other things we could have done better, blah blah blah. And I think families tend to beat themselves up about this, but we knew what we knew at the time, and we did the best we could with the knowledge that we had. Do I have a lot more knowledge now? Yes. Do I wish I could go back and impart that knowledge? Yes. But this was very foreign. And when people don't talk about this stuff openly, it's not like you post on Facebook, hey, everyone, anybody else have a heroin addiction and can give me, like, that's a weird thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a shame story. It's a shame thing. And I don't mean to stop you. I just, there's so much that you said that I love. And I love the going in there quietly and the hush hush. It's like, we're so afraid of how to react to it. We're so afraid when they're addicts and they're still with us, how to react to them. Mm-hmm. My own daughter had an addiction. We had her admitted to inpatient, and I just remember how filtered I was, and how I can't say this, I shouldn't say that. Oh gosh, I said this, and everything that I was thinking and feeling, I could never express. And I think it's like that after the fact, you know, when there's grief involved. What really hit me is when you said your mom and dad were sitting there and you had to go in there with your sister. Do you find that throughout this process with your brother passing, did you have to take over a lot of this, and that increase? And I don't want to say anybody's grief is bigger or less, but did that really increase the stress on you of, you know, maybe even the postponement of the grief, because you had to keep everything in order for everybody?
Yeah, that's a really great point to bring up, because with my parents are older, very old school. So that generation does not talk about shit. They don't, addiction in that generation is viewed as a moral failing because everyone should be able to just stop doing drugs. Everyone should just be able to stop drinking. But because they were parental figures, the way that they would talk to my brother about it, and no fault of them, but it was just very much like, stop doing this. There wasn't that understanding of why is this going on. So and again, being the oldest, I took on a lot of responsibility when I was fairly young. And I always considered myself the third parent. So when this happened, it was always, could you talk to Mark about this? And then I was almost like this in-between weird liaison, because my brother felt comfortable talking to me and being candid with me. My parents felt comfortable telling me, hey, can you talk about this? But they wouldn't connect. And I think a lot of that comes from just the dynamics of how, the dynamics of parents and children when it's an addiction, it can be really messed up, because my brother, unfortunately, had done things, everything that comes along with addiction, the bad stuff, the stealing, all that, these things had been done within my parents' home or to my parents. And so there was also, just that animosity in general. So to talk about it and not get upset was hard for them. And so I have always been the type of person who can maintain a pretty level head. But I will say that the one time that we did try an intervention, and I'm going to give a hint to everyone, never do an intervention on your own just because you watched Intervention a bunch of times on A&E. It was literally one of the worst experiences of my life, because that was my brother. He was really deep into his addiction at that point, and the person that came out, it just turned into like a very big yelling match. And if you have dealt with someone who has suffered from addiction, a lot of blame gets casted, and this is just them, they're being attacked. This is their survival mechanism. So it was so off. It was the most awful family interaction we have ever had. And I thought, all right, this is like bigger than me. But I didn't know where to go for help. So it's me just Googling random things, finding what I could. But when you Google and when you search addiction, what comes up? Rehab, 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 rehab. There are no tools back then that the first 2, 3, 4, 5 search pages aren't rehabs. So we didn't have the proper communication skills or how to communicate, because like you mentioned, you're like walking on eggshells at some points, because you don't want to trigger them and set them up to relapse, which a lot of people think relapse is a part of the process. Relapse is going to occur. Just like if you think about, if you have a diet or you go on a diet, I'm on keto for 30 days and then all of a sudden I eat a French loaf, because I'm having a carb craving. You relapse, if we want to take it in those terms. So we just didn't have that education. And since I was savvy with searching for things and researching, I did become that point person. But unfortunately, I didn't know what I should be looking for other than heroin addiction. And then, so the only options were detox or rehab. And I'm like, well, I guess those are the only things.
Wow.
That's not the case, but
that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good knowledge to give to our listeners. And I can say from my personal experience with my daughter is the fear that I had, that because it's almost like death is always on the table.
Yes.
And I know that sounds harsh, guys, but it is with an addict, because addiction and suicide go hand in hand. They tend to. My daughter was in crisis with suicide. We've called crisis lines. I've had her in mental health facilities. Yep. I've had her in addiction recovery. It's like all of it was hand in hand, and you don't want to be that one. And from a parent standpoint, you don't want to be the one that pushes them over the edge.
Exactly.
And when that happens, when they sadly do end up leaving this world, there's a guilt as a parent that you just, no matter how much you did, it's hard to believe you did enough. And Jaclyn, my heart goes out to you because you had sort of this undue pressure where it was like, you're handling parental things, but then you're also the confidant, you're also the counselor, you're the researcher. I mean, that was a lot to put on your shoulders, and it's no wonder that you are the best person to be doing what you're doing now. And I always say that about this show is my guests, I only let guests come on who've been there, done that, because they are absolutely the pros and the experts. Now, we talk about harm reduction. So do you think a lot of people know what harm reduction is? What is that?
I think a lot of people now, it's probably a little bit more well known than, say, it was, 5 years ago. The idea of harm reduction, and if we want to put just a very basic definition to it, is just unconditional love. That's how I view it. And the whole point is trying to reduce harm and acknowledging that, look, your person is in a space where they are using drugs. So meet them where they're at. How can you help them in that space versus forcing them to come to you? Because the big thing that ends up happening is that you keep telling someone you have to go to detox or rehab, and you keep enforcing these terms upon them, they're not a part of their process. They don't have any autonomy in this. So when you're talking about harm reduction, one big thing a lot of people will hear now, especially, is like carrying naloxone or Narcan. Naloxone and Narcan's just the brand name, which is the nasal spray, but both are drugs that can reverse an opioid overdose. So the very minimum level of harm reduction would be carrying Narcan or carrying naloxone on you, because a lot of people think, well, I mean, I don't use, so why would I do that? Well, you could be in a situation where you could come across someone who has overdosed, and I'm pretty sure we're all fairly aware of how fentanyl has spread in these last few years. Part of the reason my parents wanted to do a autopsy was to see if it was laced with fentanyl. And I think a part of that was just to see who to blame. I think that's a big thing in grief, is who are we going to blame for this? Who can we get mad at? Because of all the grief emotions, anger is my favorite. Absolutely. It is so easy to get angry. But then when we found out it just was a combination of substances in his system, heroin was, the main one, then it was like, well, who are we going to blame? And with fentanyl is pretty much in everything now. I mean, regardless of if you are an opioid user, if you are a stimulant user, fentanyl is being laced into meth, into cocaine. It's honestly in everything. And so another piece of harm reduction is fentanyl test strips. And there are test strips that you can use to test your drugs to see if they have fentanyl. In reality, there are many like analogs of fentanyl that exist, and this only tests for like the main 14 analogs, but it gives that autonomy back to the drug user to be like, hey, you should really test your stuff. Even though we all know that fentanyl is going to be in it, at this point, when you're doing that, and now we have this knowledge that fentanyl has infiltrated the supply, you use less, you go slow, you do not use alone. These are all things that someone may think like you're just enabling them, because I volunteer with a syringe service program, which is another piece of harm reduction. And what we do is we distribute sterile syringes to people who use drugs. We also provide them with tourniquets, alcohol wipes to sterilize the site, any tools they might need to use drugs. And someone may think you're just enabling them. In reality, they're going to use whether we exist or not. And they have used whether we existed or not. But if you can help mediate other issues, such as Hep C. Hep C transmission is very big if you're sharing syringes. If you can reduce HIV transmission. So it's reducing the harm in other areas. Yes. Are they still using that drug? Absolutely. However, having that respect for them to still be like, you are still a person. I'm still a person. You're going to make the decisions you want. I'm here to help support you in the decisions you want to make. I just want to make sure that you are safe. That can slowly open the door for more communication on other things. Because as you know, you can't force anyone to stop using drugs. You just can't. They want to have to do it on their own. But if you build up that open communication with them, acknowledge, hey, I know what you're using. And to be quite honest, most drug use is triggered by some trauma or coping for something. It helps open up the door for conversations that could eventually lead into detox or rehab or whatever it may be. But harm reduction is also, I mean, as simple as condoms. We do have people who are sex workers, and we provide condoms to them. There's a variety of things that I guess could be used as or seen as harm reduction in normal life, like a seatbelt. That's harm reduction. A helmet is harm reduction. Anything where you might get hurt, but you're still going to do it anyway. That, it's taking that approach. And I know it can be very radical, but I think we need to take a step further to understand, well, why is this person using drugs? What are they trying to cope with something? Maybe they like the feel of it. Everyone on my podcast, I've talked to people who have been opioid users, and the number one thing I get when I ask them, what does it feel like when you are using it? They say it feels like a big warm hug. It feels like a weighted blanket. So if you have someone who is dealing with trauma, you have someone who is not in a good space, and they take this substance that helps them feel like they're being hugged, or they feel just warm, or they're looking for some sort of relief, I can absolutely understand why someone would do that. And my brother, he was, what kind of kicked everything off or pushed it further was he was in a car accident. And so he had PTSD from the car accident. He was in a wheelchair for a couple months. And there are other things that he had dealt with that are definitely traumatic. But I think that's another thing too, is that you don't realize all these things that have happened in your life. You may be bottling it up, coping in some way, but it can eventually get to a point where now you're using opioids or whatever it may be.
I agree much with everything I love everything that you just said, because and I was talking to Adam Gunton, who is the founder of Recovered on Purpose, and we were talking about addictions, and I was trying to relate what I do with the addiction thing, and I really got into this deep thing of myself saying, we all have addictions. We all have addictions. And you know what? All those addictions can kill us, whether it's overeating, whether it's, drugs of any sort, alcohol,
Social
whatever
media.
it is. I tell you what mine was. And I talk about being married to an alcoholic, and I talked about, my family member being an addict. And I had to take a moment and go, what was your problem, Rain? Well, I was a love addict. And that was just as dangerous, because what did I do? I allowed myself to be in a domestic violence relationship. So technically the harm reduction there was, that codependence and needing to be in these relationships. So we all have this compilation of things that are happening, and you are spot on when you say, if we don't talk about them and we don't process them and we don't release them and we don't talk about it, especially when you come from a family like you and I both do, where we just, you don't talk about it. You sweep it under the rug and you get over it. Like my mom would say, get over it, suck it up, buttercup.
Yep.
And that's what happens, is it builds and it builds and it builds, which is why you're in coaching and why I love coaching, is we're the voice that we say, come and just tell us, just talk to us, let it out. Let me tell you how amazing you are. So you quit thinking that you're not worthy, so much so that you have to escape with heroin, alcohol, sex,
Exactly.
whatever it is. I love what you said. And I agree 100% about going out there and giving people tools. They're going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? They're going to make a choice one way or the other when they're ready. If you bring it this is when I first met Jaclyn. It's Shot in the Dark is the name of
Yep.
her. Look at me.
Yeah.
And that's locally in Arizona. And I just thought it was the neatest thing. And I went to her event, probably about a week after we met. And I just thought it was the neatest thing because here's something that's key. And if people judge and say you're enabling, then you just don't understand. And you're probably on the wrong podcast listening right now anyway, because we are not judgmental here. But the thing that I loved was there was an acceptance. And when you're an addict, you are never accepted except by other addicts. And that is the key thing is when you have people from the outside coming in and saying, I understand you do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm not judging you for doing it, but I'm saying we care about you. And here's some things to make you safer until we'll say, until you decide and make a choice that you don't want to do it anymore. And I think if we present it in that way that you have a choice and we know you're going to make that one day, how do we, because I want fentanyl strips and I want Narcan. And I don't care if I'm walking down the street and I see that I want to be that person that can help. So how do we get those things?
So there is a website called Next Distro, NEXTDISTRO.org. If you go on there, you can select your state and you can find out organizations in your area. There are a lot of public health type organizations. Like, for example, we hand out Narcan for free because we get it from Sonoran Prevention Works. Sonoran Prevention Works, they have a grant that allows them to distribute naloxone to people. So that website's a great resource to find out where naloxone is available to you. You don't have to pay for it. Within certain states, there may be a standing order. Like in Arizona, there's a standing order. So you could go to any Walgreens or CVS without a prescription, and you can ask for naloxone or Narcan. It will be covered under insurance, obviously, depending on what your insurance is. There's been recent news that Narcan is going to be available over the counter, which on the surface sounds great because you don't need a prescription, you can go grab it. However, the organizations that do provide this for free, that help others, this may potentially impact that because maybe these organizations will not be able to provide the same service. So that's still to come. I'm not going to get all Debbie Downer about it. But,
what about the fentanyl strips? Because what if you're just like a casual marijuana user and it's legal in some states?
So with I will say for fentanyl test strips, this is going to sound really bizarre. In a lot of states, it is still considered drug paraphernalia. So it's illegal to have test strips to test your drugs. I can say in Arizona, fentanyl test strips are legal now. And if you can also get those from organizations within your area, but you'll want to see if in your state, if they are legal or not. Because unfortunately, even though it's a tool meant to make things safer, it's considered paraphernalia. And I will say that a lot of times, not a lot of times, you see fentanyl very sensationalized on the news, how if you touch it, you can overdose. You cannot overdose by touching it. I will tell you right now, you cannot overdose by touching it. I know that you hear a lot of stories about police accidentally touching it, or you cannot overdose by doing that. Just to put that out there. I know I have heard different stories of it being laced in marijuana in terms of like if you're getting it off the street, not from a dispensary or anything like that. I hear two ends of it. I hear a lot of people say, well, where's the actual proof of it? Because a lot of people there might be something else they had been using in conjunction with that. Typically though, you will see it, the cocaine, the meth, marijuana, it just really depends on really more reports of that. But the test strips themselves are about like $1 a test strip, I would say. And it is a tool that should absolutely be utilized just so that whoever's using drugs just knows for a fact what they are using. Because people who use stimulants, say you use meth, you're not expecting an opioid to be in your drugs. So what was happening is that people who are stimulant users are using this and then overdosing, not knowing that there's fentanyl in their drugs. Now it's much more known, if you do outreach and people who are out there, that it's in it. But back then, like, people are like, what's going on? Like, I didn't buy opioids, I bought meth, or I bought this, what's happening? So it's just more so having that awareness that the supply on the street is just tainted at this point. And it's really dangerous. It's very scary. Like, there's a reason the overdose rate is the highest it's been. Like, last year, it was the highest it's ever been. I think it was 107,000 people died of an overdose. And that didn't need to happen. And I could, like, I know I could go on another platform about the legalities and all that. I'm not going to do all that, but
we'll do that on a whole
yeah.
other podcast. I think it's great. I think all the information you gave us was amazing. Now I want to share with the listeners in our last, perfect timing, in our last few minutes, some really cool spiritual things that have happened, and things that, and I love this because, you guys, if you know Jaclyn, like, she's got a very dry sense of humor, and she doesn't sensationalize anything, and it's great because she's just so matter of fact, and she's got TikToks, and I just think she's so fabulously herself and unfiltered. So there's some cool things that have happened that she asks her brother for signs. So tell us how that journey with all of the signs and how many things you've seen.
I love when people ask about this, because then I feel like, all right, this is a space where I can talk about this. So I am someone, and just to preface, I am not a religious person. I am a spiritual person. Did I always think something happened after you died? Yes. Did I know what? No. But after my brother passed away, there was a point where I was like just wanting to talk to him, wanting to hear from him. And so I would say, I just wish I could have another conversation with him. I wish I could whatever. About a week after his funeral, I got his favorite meal at McDonald's. That sounds very weird, but I got his favorite meal at McDonald's, which is a 10 chicken nugget meal. And I opened up the chicken nugget box. There was a chicken nugget that had been fused together with another chicken nugget, but it was in the shape of a heart, and it was right on top of all the other nuggets. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, is that like a heart from him, like saying he loves me? And then I was just like, I'm going to take a picture of this. As time went on, I can 1000% tell you my brother has given me signs, because what I feel, and I get that, obviously people are religious, but I know my brother. I like the way that he has given me signs. One big sign that he gave me that finally made me realize, oh shit, are these signs, or am I going crazy? Because up until the chicken nugget, that's a weird story to tell people. I think it was my brother. And so as time's going on, I'm getting these little things. But I remember I was going into work about a month after he passed away. And side note, 3 days of bereavement is awful in general for anyone. Like, the fact that they only give you that and you should be good to go back to work absolutely was not. But I was getting ready to go to work, and the route that I would take is a very busy one, lots of traffic. I was waiting on the off ramp, and I was dreading going into work, and I was like, Mark, I need a sign from you, and said it out loud. I need a sign from you that, like, I just need something to keep me going today. I need something. I get onto the highway. A car comes and goes in front of me, and the license plate on the car is M. Kane, M-K-A-N-E. My maiden name is Kane, And the license plate holder was a University of Arizona license plate holder. My brother, we all went to University of Arizona. The odds of a license plate that says M. Kane, my brother's name, in front of me, and mind you, this car stayed in front of me all the way until my exit. Like I exited, but it stayed in front of me the entire time. I took a picture of that and I posted that, and I thought, is this a sign? Like, is this weird? And everyone's like, holy shit. Like that, how much more obvious could that be?
I was gonna say, Mark's like, hello,
Yeah.
what more can I do here? What more can I do? But he said, hold my beer, and it continued. And I'm gonna tell everyone my favorite one, but every time Jaclyn goes for a walk in the park, she finds a piece of confetti, or she finds just random hearts everywhere.
Yes.
The most incredible thing, and I don't want to steal your thunder on
No, go ahead. Honestly, there's too many. So
I know I'm like we could just like go on about that, and it makes me so happy because the interesting thing, which is of course why we are kindred spirit sisters here, is every time I would go out in nature and go on hikes, I found hearts that were leaves or shells. And I had a collection of everything that was a heart shape. So when you started, posting those, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Of course we're connected, but this is my favorite thing. So of course, guys, you all know how much I love the puppies. Everything I do, my brand, my online store, my books, is the puppies. So Jaclyn and her husband have the most beautiful babies, and they're poodles, and they're
poodle mixes. Yeah.
Poodle mixes.
Yeah.
Black and white. And so she had Gus and Tuco, and they were just their furry babies, and they were treated just like children, and they were spoiled rotten, and they got walks in their little strollers. And Tuco and Gus both ended up getting cancer and passing away very closely to one another. And it was devastating for Jaclyn.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing on Facebook like a dog that looked like Gus. And I said, Jaclyn, look, he's calling your name. Soon enough, she's like, we weren't going to tell anybody. And she got Pierre. And Pierre looks like Gus.
Yeah, he looks like a combination of Gus and Tuco. Like he's a weird combo. And mind you, we thought we were gonna wait months to adopt it, like maybe even a year. But I saw his face online and I was like, God, he looks so much like them. And so we decided to meet him. He totally bonded with us, but I've been trying to get a picture of this, and I finally got a picture of it. On his tongue, he has a birthmark that is in the shape of a heart. And I will tell you, when I saw that, I was like, is this a joke? Like, is this seriously a joke? And it's not even like a blobby heart where it's it's a very obvious heart. So for me, like, hearts are always signs from, and they show up at the times I need them. Like, that sounds really weird, but there are times that I've had just a shit emotional day. I want to go on a walk to clear my head, and I see a heart. And all the hearts that I see, I will pick them up and collect them or take pictures, whatever it may be. But Pierre and we ended up getting a second dog about a month later. And we needed a dog to bring happiness back into our home, because we didn't know if it was the right time. And I'm like, I think we're going to know. I think we'll know. But the fact that here he is, branded with a little heart.
And it's so far back in the back of his mouth. So to be able to see it, it wasn't obvious, you guys. It wasn't like he licked his lips and she's like, oh, look, there's a heart. No, he had to yawn huge, and it's in the very back of his tongue. And when she posted it the other day, I was like, okay, now stop. This is like so over the top, like extra, like Jaclyn. No, it was fabulous, and I loved it. It made me so happy. And my opinion, and will always be, is they will choose you. It's like Callie coming to us from my daughter, or coming with my grandson. and Brody passing right
Yeah.
before Christmas, it's like they're gonna choose you, and you're gonna give them everything, and then they're gonna give it right back to you, and through them you still get that love from Gus and Tuco and
Hmm.
Mark, and it's just like this one big happy soul family.
Yeah.
So Jaclyn, I love you to pieces. And what I always do, since we always have such heavy topics, I
Hmm.
like to end a little bit on a light note. And so what I do is a little segment called Take My Money. And this segment is basically, what is the weirdest thing you've seen for sale, you've bought, or whatever? And I have the absolute best website, and they need to sponsor my site because I literally have quoted them many a times, and it is called thisiswhyi'mbroke.com.
Oh, and it lists all sorts of stuff you could buy that's absolutely pointless.
Correct. Disgusting stuff, weird stuff. So I'm just going to go a little bit light today. And this is strange flavored soda. So there is buffalo wing soda,
Ugh.
sweet corn soda, pumpkin pie soda, which doesn't sound too bad, ranch dressing soda, and peanut butter and jelly soda. So there's my example. What you got? Anything? Look around your room. Be
So
like,
things that I have bought that was
or
absolute.
yeah, or seen or anything.
Well, this is what, okay, let me tell you what I want to buy that is absolutely ridiculous and I have no use for it, but my husband still will not approve of this. I'm sure you've seen now, a couple of years ago, Home Depot, every Halloween, they have this giant, like 10-foot skeleton or 15-foot skeleton that comes out and you're supposed to put in your yard. I want that so badly. Why do I need it? I don't. Do I ever decorate my house? No. But I would love to have a 10-foot skeleton just in case. Also at Costco during Halloween time, they sell a normal size skeleton. And I tell Jordan, we need to get this skeleton. And he's like, why? What do we need this for? I'm like, I don't know. We just might need it. This past year, it was like a weird theme skeleton. I didn't like it. This year, I'm going to see if I can convince him. But again, I have no need for a skeleton. It just seems like it'd be cool to have. So that would be my thing. That's my holy grail of weird items that I don't need but absolutely want.
Oh my gosh, and I love that. And you say a 10-foot. I was in the home goods with my daughter. I think it was my daughter. And it was around the holidays. And we were walking around, and there was a 20-foot snowman or Santa, and he was falling over. And I'm thinking, little old me, 5'4", can save this thing. And yeah, it wasn't good because I'm 1/5 of its size. So, but I think if you're gonna go for it, go for the 20-footer. Don't.
And you know what? It may be 20 feet. I've seen it, like pictures of it, like all propped up on someone's lawn. It's really legit. Do I need it? No. But
You know,
I'll send you a picture. Obviously, I'll share a picture when I do eventually convince my husband it's worth the money. I don't think it is. Well, whatever. It's fine.
go big or go home. You only live once. YOLO. Tell us where our listeners can find you. Whether it's your podcast or your coaching, consulting, anything you want to share with us, you go right ahead.
So my podcast is called Dark and Enlightened. It is streaming on all platforms where I talk about dark topics and with the goal to enlighten people. Maureen was on there, so you should check out that episode that I have with her. I have a TikTok account that sounds so Gen Z. I'm a 39-year-old person with a TikTok account, but my username is Jaclyn Brown, Jaclyn Brown. And my coaching website is staygoldenjaclyn.com. I do coaching and consulting. I will be revamping my website a bit, but I really do a lot of coaching with people who have been affected by substance use. A lot of people who are just, and I'm not saying I do grief stuff, like there's a whole separate area for grief, and I want to praise all the grief coaches because that's very heavy stuff. But my big focus is really on trying to kind of find yourself again after something so tragic like that happens. So yeah,
wonderful. Good stuff. I love it. And of course, I have life coaching. Jaclyn successfully graduated
Yes.
from my coaching, which is just basically figuring out who you are, figuring out where these deep seated things are that we need to heal, and understanding ourselves better. And one of the things I work on is these false beliefs we don't even know we had.
Yes.
And Jaclyn so gracefully was so vulnerable and did the work, and we discovered things that she didn't even know, all these, all of her life that
Yeah.
she'd been dealing with, and we had a lot of stuff in common. So you can find me at lifecoachmaureen.com. A funny story is Jaclyn went on my website and then called me, and she said, I saw your website, and it was like, I felt like, I don't know, she looks all fancy, and
Yep.
I'm like, and I'm not fancy at all.
Yeah. I felt, well, and the thing is I felt very intimidated because Maureen has a fantastic website. She has great reviews. She's been on talk shows, books, and I'm like, how the hell, like, this seems like big league, and here I am. I'm like, can you help me? But Maureen is so down to earth. Like, there's a reason we're friends, like, obviously, because it's like we clicked so well, and it's just so easy to talk to you, and you're so, like you said, non-judgmental, and your coaching helped me a lot to understand that I want to be a coach in a different type of capacity. But I absolutely want to thank you for having me on here and my time coaching with you, and just for being my friend, because now I get to talk to you and whatever. But yeah, I would highly recommend, if you are stuck in your life, Maureen will help you get unstuck.
I love you. I love you. Thank you so
You.
much for that endorsement. And yeah, you mean the world to me. And that's the thing is, I do it because I'm so passionate about wanting people to have this life that they deserve and that they can have.
Yes.
And we don't know it until someone shows us the other side of the mountain.
Mhm.
And we've all been on that one side of the mountain, and no one really helped hold our hand and take us to the other side. And I want to be the voice my younger self needed. And so every client gets personal attention, and I always make sure I'm available all the time for my clients, because problems don't have a schedule. And so Jaclyn knows that. If you got a problem, text me. If you got any issues, pick up the phone. If you're going through a crisis, I had someone going to the emergency room. They were having a panic attack, and they literally told the ambulance driver, please call my life coach. I mean,
wow.
I love that. And
wow.
I was able to talk them through and talk them down.
Yes.
And, it's that means
It's
so
huge.
much to me, because that's how I feel. And it's the starfish story. It mattered to that one. And so never be too big for your britches, people. Remember where you come from, and be the person that everybody needs. So thank you all. I miss you dearly. I miss your face. We did, before I moved to Texas, we did get to go to coffee and reunite for a little bit. It was so much fun. But Jaclyn is fabulous. Go subscribe to her TikTok and to her podcast. She's hilarious. Her style is it's so dry and fun, and you can't listen to it without cracking up, and you can't look at her TikToks without cracking up. And she's really good at makeup too. So
Thank you.
And if you guys have any comments about reviews are always welcome. We're at all 5 stars right now, so that's fabulous.
Yes.
And getting up there in our downloads. So I love it. Share this with everybody. This community to me is so important, because there's always someone in your circle that needs something different from what you need. And we hope to cover all bases, and especially with the addiction and the harm reduction and the grief recovery. It touches too many of us, and hopefully that will start decreasing as we do this awareness with people like Jaclyn, coaching and consulting and sharing the word. So you guys don't forget to go check out my books on Amazon, and we're really adding a bunch of new items to mydogiseverything.net. It's our boutique.
I need to go. Oh, and no offense, I was avoiding it after the boys died because it was just too much. But now I need to go.
I love
for reminding me.
Of course, I just created in the kitchen a new recipe. So our treats are all holistic and they're only 3 ingredients, some 4. So like our hemp treats, they have CBD with the 3 ingredients. So it's pretty, they're no preservatives, no dyes, everything healthy. I created one the other day, and it's a peanut butter and jelly treat.
Ooh,
my dogs went crazy, and it's organic preserves,
Mm-hmm.
organic strawberry preserves. And the reason why I came up with this is I was cutting strawberries up the other day and they fell on the floor and my dogs came up and went crazy for them. And I was like, light bulb, do you see the light bulb over my head?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's on. Let's do it.
That's a great call out because I do feed them. They love strawberries and I've never even thought, why don't I give them something peanut butter and jelly? So
yeah. And I had to find the organic jelly.
Yeah.
Not cheap on Amazon, but worth it because it doesn't have that high fructose corn syrup.
Exactly.
And any of those additives, and the first ingredient, strawberries,
Thank God.
so it's no waxes. I mean, I'm really, to me, it's very important that everything is healthy. And then we have the shampoo bars, hypoallergenic shampoo bars, all natural organics. I just created some really fun little succulent, you'll see it on the website, but anyway, it's fun stuff. Oh, and bubbles. I have bubbles for dogs.
They would love it. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Can you, when you stop recording, can you send me the link?
Yes. I haven't uploaded the bubbles or the new planters or something else, but I'll get those on there. But yeah, they're peanut butter bubbles and they last longer. So the longer that they go, they can land in grass and not pop, and they can.
Oh, wow.
I know, they're fantastic. So
oh my gosh,
I know we're going to be doing some pop-up shops here in Austin.
Oh, cute. I love that. That's awesome.
So thank you, listeners, so much always for your support and for your sharing. And I love you all. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. Mwah. Till next week. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.